What kind of a world do we want to live in? This podcast opens the difficult and uncomfortable conversations about crime, addiction, poverty, and more. If we want a healthier community, these messy conversations need to happen. This is Dangerous Ideas for Social Change. All right, welcome to Dangerous Ideas for Social Change, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. I'm sitting here with Mallory Pledger, our Director of Programming, Sara Traver, the Director of our Engage Education Program, and I thought maybe we could just mark the spot we stand on. We are still, I don't think, Sara, over to you. I don't think we have solved absenteeism in Winnipeg's North End. Is there still an absenteeism issue? That some people ask me that.
100%.
Yeah, I had a conversation. I won't disclose my source, but somebody who's really high up there in the Department of Education, just over Christmas, and this individual, I said that the problem still exists, and this individual cited the fact that she had been told that there was new leadership, all things had changed, and everything was in hand. To which I said, no, I think it's still a struggle. Mm-hmm. So. Okay, so because, the moment we solve this problem, we'll get on to talking about other things. Mm-hmm. But Mallory, why don't you tell us a little, we did a community kind of premiere for the documentary Absent. Mallory, why don't you kind of tee that up, what that was about?
Yeah, so we held a community screening of our documentary Absent. It was important for us to show that to the community and get their feedback on their thoughts about the topic and the issue and what could be done. And it was really encouraging because we had a full room. We had a packed house. I think we had about 60 community members come out to watch the documentary, and they gave us various feedback on, we asked questions at the end, like what parts of the documentary resonated with you? Why do you think this issue exists? And what do you think we could do as a community? And yeah, got some really, really great feedback from them. Obviously, the consensus, I think, from the community members was, yes, this issue exists, and they see it in the relationships that they have because they live here in the community. And they had some really tangible ideas that were profound but also very simple. Ranging from, like relationship with youth and families and getting involved. So a lot of the things, that Engage Education and Sara's team are already doing. But yeah, it was very encouraging.
Yeah, I thought too, there's a weird dynamic where I'm always, because the claims we bring forward in the documentary are pretty damning claims. And so I'm always, in this, am I having some kind of a fever dream? Is this actually happening? And to me, again, the affirmation is that we're right about the data, we're right about the data, we're right about the data. I've heard that over and over. And so I thought we had the William White, do you guys remember, is it the Neighborhood Association? That's been changed. Mm-hmm. I used to sit on that. But the William White Neighborhood Association was out. And so, you can have a community hearing or a community viewing of a documentary, and there's certain experts that are in the room and have ears to the ground. And to hear their support, to me, was like, okay, this is definitely a problem. It is definitely a problem that we don't have in hand. But yeah, to have them here to say that, and I've had some feedback with them since. And yeah, Sara, what was your sort of thoughts from the premiere?
I think that having everybody here supporting us and seeing that the community all wants to have our backs in fighting this issue and to bring education back into our community, I think that was just really empowering. because it's not just us. It's everybody has our backs. Everybody wants to make the change.
Do you remember that there was a gentleman that was at the documentary, was getting very vocal, and he was getting worked up.
Yeah.
And I thought, even though you always want to channel somebody's intensity, and but I thought too, like that whole, he was very, very supportive of the information that we were putting forward, and also he expressed a high level of frustration with Winnipeg One, and so you try to hear those individuals, and I think your point's really important, Sarah, because as we've brought this out, there it seems like there's the stakeholders like Winnipeg One, some of the schools that we cited in the documentary, like by and large, there's been support from the schools, but at the kind of administrative level, there's like a lot of pushback, or you're wrong about the numbers, or your approach is wrong. I have a question for you in a moment about your approach, and but then to hear that the community is with us, and so then you end up in a critical place where, okay, if Winnipeg One wants to continue to push back on this, then just let the record show they're pushing back on the will of the community, which is basically community development principle number 1 is to listen to your community. And so then the conflict isn't necessarily with the administration as it relates to the documentary, or the administration as it relates to the work we've done in opening this issue up. It's actually with the community. So, okay, I want to ask you, Sarah. I've heard we won't identify sources, but what you're doing characterizes they just knock on doors. That's all they do. So basically, the implication is that if you have a knuckle, which most of us do, and can move your arm back and forth, then that is all you're doing, Sarah. So please debunk that myth. I think there's more. So is it just door knocking? That's it?
Definitely not.
Say more.
It starts with the knocking on the door. My elbow and knuckle do get sore sometimes, but you know what? It comes from the relationships that you build. I'll get a source that, hey, this family's struggling, their kid's not attending school. How can we help them? I go there, I knock on the door. And then I continue to knock on the door until they open the door. And then it's really just listening to their story, figuring out why they're struggling, why they're not attending, how I can help them. Is it a family issue? Is it just a student issue? Is it, we're figuring out the source of the problem, and then we're taking the steps with them to attend school. So, sometimes it's 3 or 4 lunches before I even have a plan with that student on whether or not they can reintegrate for an hour a week or 5 hours a week. We don't know. And every student is different that we connect with. So, yeah.
Yeah, early on, I remember we talked about the second knock, or was it? I think you're probably saying it could be the third knock, like where there you can try once, but you have to continue to be persistent.
Consistency.
Mallory, in your observation, so Sarah's, she's good at describing what she does, but what have you seen Sara doing? Like, give us a picture of kind of what you're seeing in terms of the work they do.
So what I think is really special about this team is that they're motivated by impact. They're driven by purpose, right? Like a lot of the team members, Sara in particular, she's worked and lived in the community. Both of the staff members that we currently have right now also grew up in the community. They know what it's like to have had barriers growing up, and they care deeply about these kids. And so it's not just the knocking on the door. It is the relationships, but what they do is they meet each kid where they're at, and it's not like when we design this program, we have metrics, we've got stages, we've got approaches that are an umbrella, and they're quite general. But when it really comes down to each individual, kid, they really take the time to get to know them, the family. Each plan is different. And so it takes time. And I would say, like, if we obviously want to have a high success rate and all of that, but we recognize that that we have to be able to serve a smaller group of kids because of the level of intensity in the work that they do in terms of relationship building. But it's huge. Like Sarah just shared the other day about, a student reaching out to her and just saying, like, I'm doing really well, like, you'd be so proud of me. Like, look at me now. Can I tell you all about how much I've grown? And like, that's one student, but it's more than that. Like, I know that there are more kids that her and her team have had that impact on, which is a really amazing thing.
Sarah, say a little more about this this individual who was talking about her success, and talk about how that feels for you. Talk about the journey a little bit without, of course, disclosing who it is. But
well, he is a young man that his mom passed away from breast cancer. She had all the surgeries, all the things, tried to get healthy, did not work. He lost her, and he really went downhill. He wasn't attending school. He wasn't doing well at all. And then he started cutting hair on the side. And he wanted to start his own little barber shop. It was kind of like his little, like, happiness at the end of a dark time for him. And his dad was a single dad now, trying to hold the family together. And I just saw him for everything that he was going through, and just, I know it's hard. I know you're still going to school, but you're not actually, mentally, I guess, in school.
Yeah.
He was just not there. And just encouragement messages and reminding him every day, he's got this, he can do this. He ended up graduating, which was, I think, a year later than he had normally planned, but he did it. And now he has his own little barbershop, and he's cutting hair, and he's doing fantastic. And I'm looking forward to going for coffee with him.
it's amazing. Sometimes outsiders looking in on the challenges we face in our community kind of have, well, just go to school. Just go to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how hard is it, But I'm calling to mind a quote I read from an old book about urban mission and about working within impoverished communities. And it defined youth. They said they were youth upon whom society had placed too great a burden. And so, when you think about that young man and sort of the glib outsider commentary, like, come on, just go to school. Like, this is too great a burden for someone who's going through what he's going through. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, like, what are some of the burdens that are just too great for the kids that you're working with? What are some of the things that these kids are carrying?
Every possible thing you can think of. There's addictions in the home. There's a single parent in the home who's trying to work and carry the load of the whole household. So then those teenagers or those youth are faced with taking care of their siblings just to help out a little bit while their families are working. Just poverty in general across the North End. There's so many different things.
Yeah. So Mallory kind of hinted at it a bit. And I know you and I have talked. When you think about the problem of student absenteeism, you can have the expert approach, and then you can have persons with lived experience. Sarah, tell us a little bit about your educational journey growing up. Are you okay to do that? Am I putting you on the spot? Just give us a sense.
I was not a great student. I hated school. I'm just going to throw that out there. No, my dad wasn't in the home, and my mom was trying to raise our me and my brother on her own while putting herself through nursing school, and just being a single mom while also trying to work. I was in charge of my brother a lot. So, yeah, school wasn't my favorite place to be. Now, it's funny that you would think never in my wildest years would I have ever thought, oh, I'm going to go to school and work in a school and tell kids that chase your education dreams and go for it and do your thing and go to university myself, or any of that was never at all what I thought about. And now here I am doing it every day, and I know that how important it is for them to, even when you are struggling, to just push through it as hard as it can be. You can still be successful without fitting in that perfect little box of 9 to 5, go to school, do your thing, and go back home in the evening. Everybody has their own time, their own place, but education will help you go farther.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a common belief, right? That's what we saw in the premiere of the documentary here in the community, and I guess that's what we've all put our necks on the line for, is we believe in education. I think maybe that's, Mallory, I've been feeling a little bit of tension about, I've got a number of messages from teachers kind of with the vibe of, hey, can't you see we're doing our best? Can't you see we're trying? And I've kind of been holding those messages, and because our intent, I think, was never to levy criticisms at teachers, but I think teachers feel it, feel the pain of that, and I don't know. What are your thoughts on whether we've hit the note right in this documentary? I don't know.
I think when you're in an industry and you've devoted your life and your career and your identity to it, it hurts a little bit when you get negative feedback. Obviously, we think teachers are amazing and they do really, really hard work. But I think that the education system as it exists right now is outdated. It doesn't serve the kids, and it doesn't serve the teachers either. Like I have friends who went into teaching because they love working with kids. They love watching kids grow and learn. And obviously, to an extent, you get to do that. But if teachers were given flexibility and autonomy in teaching kids the way that they, innately want to, in the ways that, like Sarah has the flexibility to take a kid out to lunch or do things with the kid that, serve their interests and play on their strengths, I think that teachers would be maybe a lot more happier and content with the classroom and things like that. But I do think in terms of the system, it's time for an overhaul. It's time to look at more innovative ways that will serve kids and allow teachers to really do the things that I think they're dreaming of. In the States, I've heard a number of different stories about teachers leaving the traditional school to go and work for families to do homeschooling, they work with a group of families,
pods.
Yeah, in pods, and they have the flexibility to take the kids out and do different activities and different sensory things to help kids learn. I also think about the kids that we work with here, but also my own kids. They learn best by doing, by watching, by standing alongside somebody and observing and testing things out. And you're really limited to that in a classroom. You can't do too much of it. You sit next to someone and you listen to a lecture, or you take notes and you fill out workbooks. And I think that's important, but I don't think it should be the emphasis. And so,
yeah. So I think, as I've been reflecting on that, a really, again, conversation I had over Christmas with somebody involved in education, and that was there was kind of that gentle imploring to say, it's hard. Like, it's very difficult, very challenging, and it's very difficult in the classroom and the challenges we face in the classroom. And then actually getting to education, we're doing so much classroom control. And even today, in today's Free Press, there's a piece out on violence in schools. There's a researcher who's done some of this research and some of the dynamics of integrating students into the classroom who are really difficult to handle, in terms of behavior. So I think my posture is one of we support education, and we know that teachers are rolling up their sleeves every day and pouring out their hearts, and we support that. And but I think I want to invite people to what you kind of hinted at, Mallory, which is a kind of common cause. Okay. We need to kind of say, okay, the documentary said there is a problem. And we've had feedback from educators across the board, even the ones that have disagreed with us, have said you're right about the data. So we have kind of common cause. And when you bring a problem like this to the surface, it's very difficult to hit exactly the right tone. But if we can just sort of say, okay, this is where we are, and we heard we got some feedback about how things are going in the community. Where to from here? Can we kind of set the sort of the sting of the revelation of all of this aside and just say, okay, where are we going to go? Because that's really what our heart was in doing the documentary, was to say, can we imagine a better way? Why don't we just sort of dive into a little bit of some of the feedback that we got through the premiere in the community, and just sort of riff on what we saw there. People were very receptive to the message, and also weirdly not surprised. And so, to me, I think I do have moments where I say, okay, if everybody has known this, and if, regardless of what people say, I do hear one piece where it's like, ever since COVID. No, that's not true. COVID definitely was an accelerator, but this problem has existed way before COVID. When I think about the message that would, so there was something dysfunctional happening, I'm guessing for 20 years. Okay, I don't have proof for that, but that's my guess. So for 20 years, there's been something very dysfunctional happening. And there would be a reflex for someone to blow the whistle or ring a bell or say, something's wrong. But really no one did. And I wonder about that. I wonder why. Like, I honestly would have preferred to not do this documentary. But then you would have needed somebody to say, okay, I just want to call this out. And it would have had to have been somebody within the Department of Education. And that's where that thing about, hey, we're doing our best, I have a feeling that's the rejoinder that's been said for 20 years. Like, there might have been the staff room, discussions about, what happened to all the kids. And the reason no one stepped forward is because they started to live into that, hey, we're doing our best. Like, we are doing our best. And so apparently that's kept us from having this conversation. So I would hate for us to now keep saying that. Like, we can say that and set that aside. Okay, for sure we're doing our best, but can we do better? And can we change the system? You hinted at the system needing a revamp. Say more about that, Mallory. What are your thoughts on what revamps we need?
Well, I think so. Sarah and I went to the Indigenous Education Conference in November.
You guys came back very excited from that.
We're very excited because we learned a lot about what Indigenous communities do to teach their kids in meaningful ways. And so much of it, are the values that Engage Education already has, like relationship. And, I think land-based teaching, but also like environmental teaching. So when you're out and about, you're always teaching, you're always getting the kids to observe, you're always asking for their feedback, you're always asking for their thoughts, to be able to like get that going. But being in relationship was the big thing. And I think that's really hard to do in a classroom when you are like sitting in a desk and you're having to, go through a PowerPoint presentation. For the kids that we serve in this community, already they're below grade level in terms of reading, in terms of numeracy. So many of them have ADHD, they have anxiety, and so it's really hard to focus. But if we can engage kids on a level that, education is exciting for them, like maybe we went to one lecture where they talked about in lieu of a biology class, they took the kids to skin animals. And so they had different stations, and like one station was the skin of an animal. And so they talked about like how the hide or the skin was this large organ, and they got to touch it and they got to feel it. Then, there was another station where they were taking out the organs and they were looking at the different organs, and they were looking at the skeletal structure. And then from an Indigenous perspective, they talked about what they use all those body parts for, and what kind of benefits they get out of it. And the kids were all engaged. And it was also self-directed. So the kids could go from station to station and like immerse themselves in whatever looked to be most engaging to them. And then there was feedback from someone in the crowd that said, hey, yeah, I went on that, and it was like the most memorable education experience I've ever had. And so I think opportunities like that, obviously that's just one standalone thing, but if we can take, learnings from that type of experience and bring them into the classroom and have more of that and have an emphasis on that, and take the emphasis off of standardized testing and like those kind of metrics, I think we'd set our kids up for success. A little bit more so. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think again, kind of going back to the feedback we got from the community. A lot of confirmation from what, Sarah, we've heard from you, like in terms of what are the biggest barriers that prevent Indigenous youth from attending school. And then to hear, some of the feedback was lack of support, encouragement, and education, home and family dynamics. Strong families overcome adversity. And so how can we strengthen families is sort of the corollary to that. Mental health issues, economic struggles, addictions. Not enough Sarahs. That's sweet. Not feeling safe, accessibility to school, transportation, kind of all the things in a sense, and that we've been hearing. And so just in terms of, I feel like if we could kind of reimagine education in a way, I think we are reimagining what's possible. And I guess that conference kind of tweaked for you guys a little bit of what's possible. Are there any other things you took from the conference where it's like, where you kind of like an epiphany, like, wow, that's a fantastic idea? What were some of the things you heard through that conference that stand out?
Well, I think I always knew that like the community setting for the family, I guess, would be their biggest support, their biggest push, their biggest, everything. But one thing that I learned at the conference was, up in some of the reserves, it's their aunt going to their house and taking them to school. It's their cousins, their family, their people that they are with every day, encouraging them and being a part of their journey. So I think that really that was like eye opener. It's like we need more of our community knocking on the doors and encouraging their neighbors and, showing them that that's the right way or right path to go down, right? So I think that was my biggest,
We got really excited. We met with one school board. I think it was in the Yukon. And they showed us their organizational chart. And we were like, this is amazing. So what it was like it looked like, the rings on a tree trunk. Mm-hmm. And so in the middle were the kids, then it was community, then it was then it was education, then it was government. And it was kind of like what is student centered and what is community focused first. And it flipped. It was like the opposite of what we have here, where you've got a top down approach, right? Where you've got, administration dictating what education looks like rather than, students, forming education around the students' needs. And we got really excited to meet with them and talk with them. And they talked about how they have different members of the different Inuit communities and First Nations communities come together, and they make up the school board, and they talk about, what are their children's needs. Educators are obviously involved in that, but they're the ones who identify what the needs are, what the kind of direction is, and then the government and administration support that. And I thought, we thought that was just really cool because they talked about also their success too in re-engaging kids. They had a marker for when they started the school board, and the kids who had been in the education system from that moment, their graduation rates were higher than kids who prior to the school board forming. And so that was really neat.
So I'm curious, both of you, whether that is that kind of when you think about problem solving, problem definition is always the key. Where if you get the definition of what's going on, then your efforts can go in the right direction. So if you think about that child-centered, how is that something that we can talk around? How can we make children the center of education? Sarah, when I hear about your the work you do, I know that schools will talk about their IEPs, individualized education plans for students, so customized for that kid. But when I hear about what you're doing, it is not like a 3-step package deal. You're really customizing it to the kid. Say a little bit about how you center the kids.
An IEP is still a bunch of adults in a room saying what's going to be best for that child, where I'm coming from I'm going to sit down with you and I want to hear what you think is best for you. And then we're going to figure out how we're going to make that happen. Right. It's a lot of listening and talking to the youth themselves, because they know themselves best. Not you, not me, not, we can say, oh, this worked for so-and-so, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for them, right? So I need to hear from them, and they take the lead. Because if they can take the lead and they can tell me, the chances and the likelihood of them following through are far more greater.
I think I kind of have a thing I've noticed, is that the degree to which young people are feeling powerless is the degree to which they often exercise their power in negative ways by, maybe a kid's feeling everything about my life is out of control.
Yes.
I am going to control education. I'm not going to school, or I'm going to act out in this way. There's certain things where they kind of take back their power. And I think, how do we kind of get to the core of where a kid has kind of lost control? And what you're describing there is
I'm giving them the control.
Regaining control.
Yep.
Yeah. Sarah, you and I had a really interesting opportunity. I think it was this last summer. Mm-hmm. We had a call in. We put a call in to the Core Neighborhood Youth Co-op. They have a community credit program that they run over there. And we had an interesting kind of conversation with their executive director, Marcel Petit. He was I guess he has a background. He's an actor. He's Indigenous, so he brings some of the cultural kind of stuff to their program that they have over there. But like we're kind of in that imagining stage, like what could be. And I found just Sarah, help me if my recollection on this is off, but what Marcel told us was that he noticed that the kids were not engaged in school, were not connecting with school, and so they started to work on reaching kids to try to reintegrate them with school, and they ran into, wouldn't you know it, same kind of obstacles we've run into, that schools weren't sort of like pliable in the sense that they weren't willing to kind of do that, right? And so some, obviously not across the board, but he was finding that very difficult to get a kid, all worked up for education's important, and then to find that schools were kind of not ready to receive that kid who's maybe landing in the end of November or something like that. Yeah. And so to my recollection of his story is that almost kind of forced their hand. So, okay, I guess we'll have to become a school, essentially. Mm-hmm. Sarah, what kind of, the funny part of this is I was on a speaker call and I dragged her in and she didn't even know what meeting she was going into, but I was being so inspired by Marcel. I'm like, Sarah absolutely has to hear this. And we were like, at the end, we were just kind of like, unbelievable. This guy's amazing. So what was your takeaway from that conversation? Again,
he is doing a lot of the same things that we were doing with Engage, except for now he has the ability to give the kids credits and work with them that we don't have yet. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really encouraging to know that there is a way to do it. We haven't quite figured it out yet, but being able to work with the kid, listen to the kid, and still encourage them in a way where they're going to be able to get their credits and still graduate, not in a normal traditional school setting, I guess, is phenomenal.
And do they do like work skills as part of that co-op?
Yes.
Is that what they do?
Yeah,
yes,
they had a construction program going there as well. And at some point, I want to have Marcel on and to have him, because he can do a much better job of describing this. As
100%. You threw me into that, and I was like, what am I listening to?
This is my recollection. You're right, Mallory. They did have a construction program, some kind of a carpentry vibe to it. And that kind of maps onto what you guys were learning through your conferences, like hands-on kind of education.
Hands-on learning. And I think, too, like there's purpose in employment too, like for so many of these kids that we know who've gone into Step Up even. Mm-hmm. Like the growth and the changes.
Step Up is our construction program that we have over here.
Yes, to
clarify.
Thank you. They've developed and grown so much, and feel a sense of pride too when they're talking about like the income they're making and how they're supporting their families. But I think that that's a big part of education for a lot of these students that we have too, that maybe they didn't see themselves in a career or in a job, and now suddenly they get to build things or they get to be a part of a team, and that's really meaningful for them. So I love that idea.
Yep.
Yeah. I hope that in the coming months we can start to prime people's imagination for what's possible, and I think necessity is the mother of invention. Where if we had things in hand, then we wouldn't need to be so entrepreneurial and creative, but we don't. Yeah. And we've been trying. By we, I mean education in Winnipeg's North End, specifically in the north as well. There's some big challenges, and so I think we're kind of in that place where we better start to innovate, because so far what we've done has really not moved the needle much. We are learning. We've definitely moved the needle on the lives of those individuals we're working with. So we're kind of, that whole initiative, Engage Education, has been all just innovate, just try things. What is that Built to Last research? Try a lot of things and keep what works. That was one of their main research pieces in that Built to Last research. And so that's what we've been trying to do. And I think that would be my invitation to our listenership that to invite you to imagine what's possible, and also I think we'll just give a little primer, we'll put it out there to say that we are thinking some bold thoughts for this year, that we're hoping to make some big moves on this issue, and we'll just bait the air with that and leave it just sort of pregnant with possibility. Won't tell you what it is, but there's some things coming, and so we're excited about that, and our invitation is to everybody, families, children in our community, educators. We really need to come together and just begin to have that child-centered imagination for what's possible. Set aside our agendas, set aside our differences, set aside our philosophical, theological differences, and work for the well-being of our kids.
Yes.
And the thing is, I think if we can do that, something beautiful will happen for us as well, for all of us. And so that's our invitation. Any closing thoughts, you guys?
No, I feel like you nailed that.
Well, this is on record, the first podcast I have nailed. And thanks, Mallory, for that. Thank you, Mallory and Sara. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you for your support and the feedback we get, the emails you send our way. It's kent@icya.ca. So please share this podcast, and let's get the conversation going. Thank you, and have a wonderful week. Thanks for tuning in to Dangerous Ideas for Social Change.